My crush called me the dumb one. She didn't know I was her new principal. The coffee hit my shirt before I even realized what was happening. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I fumbled for napkins, my face burning as hot as the liquid seeping through my button-down. I didn't see you there, I was just. Jesus Christ, watch where you're going. The woman's voice cut through the Tuesday morning buzz of grind coffee like a whip. When I looked up from my stained shirt, my heart stopped. Sarah Chen. 5'6", long black hair, those ridiculous green eyes that had haunted my Instagram feed for 3 years. She was even more beautiful in person, which somehow made this moment infinitely worse. I'm really sorry, I said again, grabbing more napkins from the dispenser. Let me buy you another. Ugh, no thanks. She stepped back like I had some contagious disease, brushing imaginary coffee drops off her pristine white blouse. Her 2 friends flanked her like bodyguards, and I recognized them too from her social media posts. The blonde one, Jessica, I think, was already pulling out her phone. Seriously, Sarah, only you would get attacked by some random guy before 8 a.m., Jessica laughed, and I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. I'd been planning this accidental meeting for weeks, timing my coffee runs to match her usual Tuesday morning routine. I'd practiced conversation starters in my bathroom mirror like some pathetic teenager. Not once had I imagined bumping into her literally. I really am sorry, I tried one more time, extending my hand. I'm David, by the way. David Park. I think we might have some mutual friends. Sarah's expression shifted from annoyed to something worse. She looked me up and down with the kind of assessment you'd give a used car you had no intention of buying. Oh, you're that guy, she said, and her friends immediately perked up with interest. Melissa mentioned you. Said you kept asking about me at her birthday party last month. My face went nuclear. I hadn't realized Melissa had told her about my questions. I thought I'd been subtle. I just thought. What, that you'd stalk me until I agreed to talk to you? Sarah's voice was getting louder, and other customers were starting to stare. That's not creepy at all. No, I wasn't stalking. Listen, she said, turning to her friends with a smirk that made my chest tight, this is the guy I was telling you about. The one who sent me that weird LinkedIn message asking about educational philosophy or whatever. Jessica snorted. Oh my God, that was him. I thought you made that up. Nope. This is the dumb one I told you about. Sarah's eyes found mine again, and there wasn't an ounce of kindness in them. The one who thinks messaging random teachers makes him sound intellectual. The coffee shop felt like it was spinning. Every conversation had stopped. The barista was pretending to clean the same spot on the counter over and over. A college student in the corner had her phone out, probably recording. That's not what I started, but Sarah was already turning away. Come on, guys. We're gonna be late for the faculty meeting. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, her friends trailing behind like eager hyenas. Good luck with your educational philosophy. Jessica called over her shoulder, and their laughter followed them out into the parking lot. I stood there, coffee-stained and humiliated, watching through the window as Sarah climbed into her Honda Civic. In exactly 4 hours, I'd be sitting at the head of the conference table in Lincoln High School's main office, introducing myself as their new principal. She had no idea what was coming. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after she left, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. The coffee stain had already set into my shirt, the good one I'd specifically chosen for today because I thought it brought out my eyes. Now it looked like I'd been in a food fight with a toddler. The dumb one. Those 3 words kept echoing in my head as I drove home to change. She'd said it so casually, like it was an established fact. Like she'd been discussing me with her friends, cataloging my failures for their entertainment. The LinkedIn message. God, I cringed thinking about it now. I'd spent 2 hours crafting what I thought was a thoughtful question about project-based learning approaches. I genuinely wanted to know her thoughts. She'd posted some interesting articles about student engagement. But hearing her describe it as weird made me want to crawl into a hole. By 10:30 a.m., I was standing outside Lincoln High School in a fresh shirt, briefcase in hand, trying to transform from the bumbling idiot at the coffee shop into Dr. David Park, educational leader. The irony wasn't lost on me that I had 2 master's degrees and a doctorate in educational administration, yet somehow I was the dumb one. Principal Martinez met me in the lobby, her smile warm and genuine. David. So glad you're finally here. Ready for the grand tour? Absolutely. I managed to match her enthusiasm, pushing down the knot of anxiety in my stomach. I'm excited to meet the team. As we walked through the hallways, she rattled off statistics and updates. Enrollment's up 12% from last year. Test scores improved across the board. We've got a really solid faculty, most have been here 5 years or more. We passed the math wing, the science labs, the library where students were already gathering for lunch period. Normal high school stuff. Nothing that should have made my pulse race. The English department is right down here, Martinez continued, gesturing toward a cluster of classrooms. That's where Sarah Chen teaches, she's fantastic. One of our rising stars, really. Been here 3 years, kids love her, parents love her. She runs the debate team and they've won regionals 2 years running. Of course she was fantastic. Of course she was beloved. That somehow made it worse. She's actually spearheading our new digital literacy initiative, Martinez went on. Really forward-thinking educator. You'll work with her quite a bit on curriculum development. My mouth went dry. Work with her. Oh yes, she's on the academic planning committee, department liaison for the school board meetings, heads up our teacher mentorship program. Very involved. I'm sure you two will collaborate frequently. I nodded and made appropriate noises, but inside I was calculating. Committee meetings. Performance evaluations. Budget discussions. Professional development assignments. As principal, I'd have input on all of it. The power dynamic had shifted so completely it gave me vertigo. 4 hours ago, I'd been some pathetic loser she could mock in public. Now I was her boss. I could assign her lunch duty every day for a month. I could give her the worst class schedules. I could recommend against her tenure track application. Not that I would. I wasn't vindictive. But the fact that I could, that she had no idea who she just humiliated, sent a dark thrill through me that I didn't entirely like. When do I meet the faculty? I asked. Martinez checked her watch. Full staff meeting at 2:15. You'll do your official introduction then. She smiled. Don't worry, they're going to love you. I wondered if Sarah would still think I was the dumb one when she found out I was the youngest principal in the district's history. The faculty meeting was scheduled for 2:15 p.m. in the library. By 2:10, I was standing outside the double doors, straightening my tie for the 5th time and trying to decide if I was more nervous or vindictive. Maybe both. Through the glass, I could see teachers filing in, grabbing folding chairs arranged in neat rows. There was the AP biology teacher I'd read about in the school newsletter, the wrestling coach who doubled as a history instructor, the art teacher whose students had won 3 state competitions last year. And there was Sarah. She sat in the 3rd row, notebook open, pen ready. The perfect picture of professional engagement. She'd changed out of the coffee shop outfit into a navy blazer and black slacks, appropriate for meeting the new principal, I supposed. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she was chatting quietly with the woman next to her, probably comparing theories about what kind of administrative nightmare they were about to inherit. Ready, Dr. Park. Martinez appeared at my elbow, holding a manila folder thick with staff information. Ready as I'll ever be. She pushed open the doors and the conversations gradually died down. 34 faculty members, according to my paperwork. 34 people who'd shape my first impression as a leader. 34 potential allies or obstacles in my new career. And one who'd called me the dumb one 6 hours ago. Good afternoon, everyone. Martinez's voice carried easily across the room. I know you're all eager to meet our new principal, so I won't keep you in suspense. Please join me in welcoming Dr. David Park. The applause was polite, scattered. A few people smiled genuinely, the librarian, the guidance counselor who'd interviewed me back in June. Most just looked curious, waiting to see what kind of boss they'd be dealing with for the foreseeable future. I stepped forward, and that's when Sarah saw me. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might actually faint. Her pen slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. The woman next to her, Mrs. Rodriguez from the Spanish department, leaned over with concern. You okay, Sarah? Sarah nodded quickly, but her eyes never left mine. I could practically see her mental calculator working overtime, trying to figure out how screwed she was. Thank you all for the warm welcome, I began, forcing my voice to stay steady. I'm thrilled to be joining the Lincoln High family. I know transitions can be challenging, but I'm confident we can work together to continue building on this school's incredible reputation. Standard principal speak. Safe, boring, reassuring. But my eyes kept drifting back to Sarah, who looked like she was watching her career flash before her eyes. My background is primarily in curriculum development and educational technology, I continued. I'm particularly interested in expanding our digital literacy programs and creating more opportunities for cross-departmental collaboration. At the mention of digital literacy, Sarah actually winced. She knew as well as I did that her initiative would require principal approval for funding, scheduling, everything. I'll be scheduling one-on-one meetings with each of you over the next 2 weeks. I want to hear your ideas, your concerns, your vision for where we can take this school. I let my gaze linger on Sarah for just a beat too long. I believe everyone has valuable insights to contribute, regardless of first impressions. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes. Budget updates, schedule changes for the upcoming semester, reminders about professional development requirements. Normal stuff that I delivered with what I hoped was appropriate authority. But I was hyper-aware of Sarah's every movement. She took notes mechanically, nodded when appropriate, but her usual confident posture had crumbled into something smaller, more defensive. When Mrs. Rodriguez whispered something to her, she just shook her head and stared at her hands. When I finally dismissed the meeting, most teachers filed out in clusters, discussing their new boss in hushed tones. Sarah bolted for the door like the building was on fire. She almost made it. MS. Chen. My voice carried across the emptying library, and I watched her shoulders tense. She was 3 steps from freedom, but 20 teachers were still within earshot. She couldn't exactly ignore her new principal's direct address. She turned around slowly, and I had to give her credit, she'd managed to compose her expression into something resembling professional courtesy. Dr. Park. Congratulations on the position. Thank you. I was hoping we could chat for a moment about your digital literacy initiative. Mrs. Martinez spoke very highly of it during my tour this morning. The irony was delicious. 6 hours ago, she'd mocked my LinkedIn message about educational philosophy. Now she had to stand here and discuss curriculum with me like I was a competent adult worthy of respect. Of course, she said, glancing nervously at the few remaining teachers. Mrs. Rodriguez was lingering near the circulation desk, clearly sensing drama. Would you prefer to schedule a formal meeting? I know you're probably busy with. Now works fine. I gestured toward the small conference room adjacent to the library. It'll just take a few minutes. She had no choice but to follow me, her heels clicking against the linoleum like a countdown timer. I held the door open for her, a gesture that felt both polite and ominous, and closed it behind us. The conference room was cramped, designed for small group tutoring rather than administrative discussions. Sarah sat on the far side of the round table, putting maximum distance between us, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles were white. So, I said, settling into the chair directly across from her. Digital literacy. Right. She cleared her throat, and some of her natural confidence seemed to return. When Sarah talked about teaching, she transformed, even under these circumstances. The initiative focuses on integrating technology meaningfully across all subject areas, not just using computers for the sake of using computers. We want students to understand digital citizenship, evaluate online sources critically, create multimedia presentations that actually enhance their learning rather than just look flashy. Despite everything, I found myself genuinely interested. Her proposal packet, which I'd reviewed that morning without knowing she was the author, was actually innovative. She'd outlined a 3-year implementation plan, identified specific learning outcomes, even researched grant opportunities for funding. The budget projection shows $47,000 for the first year, I said, pulling out my copy of her proposal. That's significant. What makes you confident this approach will show measurable results? Sarah's eyes widened slightly when she saw I had her paperwork. She probably thought I was just making small talk about some vague concept Martinez had mentioned. We piloted a smaller version with my sophomore English classes last semester, she said, her voice gaining strength. Reading comprehension scores improved by an average of 23%. More importantly, students reported feeling more confident analyzing media they encounter outside school. In today's world, that's not just academic skill, it's survival. She was right, and she knew it. I could see her starting to remember that she was good at her job, that her ideas had merit regardless of our personal history. Interesting, I said. I notice you've identified Mrs. Patterson from math and Mr. Williams from history as potential pilot partners for cross-curricular integration. Have you discussed this with them? Preliminary conversations, yes. They're both excited about the possibilities. Mrs. Patterson especially sees connections to data analysis and statistical literacy. We talked for another 10 minutes, and I had to admit, grudgingly, that Sarah knew what she was doing. Her initiative wasn't just well-planned, it was exactly the kind of forward-thinking program that could set Lincoln High apart from other schools in the district. Which made my next decision considerably more complicated. I'll need to review the full budget implications, I said finally. Budget committee meets next Friday at 3:30 p.m. Plan to present your proposal then. She nodded, already reaching for her bag. Thank you for your time, Dr. Park. Sarah. She froze at my use of her first name. I think we should address what happened this morning. The professional mask slipped, and for a moment she looked exactly like the woman who'd called me the dumb one. Vulnerable. Caught. I think we should pretend it never happened, she said quietly. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. Do you? The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Sarah's fingers drummed against her portfolio, a nervous habit that somehow humanized her after this morning's cruelty. I mean, she continued, her voice steadier now, we're both professionals. Personal interactions outside of work shouldn't impact our working relationship. Personal interactions. I repeated the phrase slowly, tasting each word. Is that what you'd call it? Her cheeks flushed pink, but she held my gaze. Dr. Park, I apologize if I was rude this morning. I was running late, and I'd had a difficult conversation with my department head about class sizes, and you called me the dumb one. The words came out sharper than I'd intended. In front of half the coffee shop. You said I was some creepy stalker who thought LinkedIn messages made him sound intellectual. Sarah's careful composure finally cracked. Yes. I did say that. She took a shaky breath. It was unprofessional and unkind, and I'm genuinely sorry. Are you sorry because it was unkind, or because you just found out I'm your new boss? The question hung in the air like smoke. Outside the conference room, I could hear the custodial staff setting up chairs for tonight's PDA meeting. Normal school sounds. Nothing that should have made this moment feel so loaded with possibility. Both, she admitted finally. If I'm being honest, it's both. I had to respect the honesty, even if it confirmed what I already knew. Sarah Chen was sorry she'd been caught, not sorry she'd been cruel. Here's what's going to happen, I said, opening her digital literacy proposal to a page I'd marked that morning. Your initiative shows promise, but the timeline is aggressive. Instead of a 3-year rollout, I want to see a 5-year plan with more conservative budget projections. Her face fell. Dr. Park, the grant funding I've researched is specifically for 3-year implementation cycles. If we extend it to 5 years, we lose access to $23,000 in state technology funds. Then find alternative funding sources. I made a note in the margin of her proposal. Corporate partnerships, maybe. Local business sponsors. Get creative. That could delay the launch by an entire academic year, she protested. The students who would benefit from early implementation will still benefit from a more sustainable program. I closed the folder and looked directly at her. Ms. Chen, I need to know that initiatives launched under my administration will succeed long-term. Rushing into something because grant money is available isn't strategic planning, it's opportunism. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her calculating. How hard could she push back without seeming insubordinate? How much of this was legitimate administrative caution versus personal payback? The truth was, I wasn't entirely sure myself. I'll revise the timeline, she said finally. But I'd like to request a follow-up meeting once I've researched alternative funding. Some of my concerns might be addressable with more detailed planning. Of course. My door is always open for dedicated faculty members. The phrase, dedicated faculty members, landed exactly how I'd intended. Sarah caught the implication, that her dedication was now in question, that she'd need to prove herself worthy of my time and support. She gathered her materials and stood to leave, then paused at the door. Dr. Park. For what it's worth, your LinkedIn message about educational philosophy wasn't weird. It was actually thoughtful. I was having a bad week, and I took it out on you unfairly. Thank you for saying that. Will this affect my performance evaluation in December? The vulnerability in her voice almost made me feel guilty. Almost. That depends entirely on your performance, Ms. Chen. She nodded and left, closing the door softly behind her. I sat alone in the conference room, staring at her proposal. The smart move would be to approve it as written. Her research was solid, the budget was reasonable, and the program could genuinely help students. But Sarah Chen had made this personal first. The next morning, I arrived at school 30 minutes early, partly to avoid any coffee shop encounters and partly because I couldn't sleep. Sarah's proposal sat on my desk where I'd left it, covered in red ink from my late-night review session. I'd found myself nitpicking details that were perfectly reasonable, questioning budget lines that were well-researched, demanding clarifications for points that were already clear. By 7:15 a.m., I was second-guessing myself. Was I being a vindictive asshole, or a thorough administrator? The line felt increasingly blurry. My internal debate was interrupted by a knock on my office door. Come in. To my surprise, it wasn't my secretary, it was Tom Bradley, the history teacher I'd met yesterday. Tall, graying beard, the kind of guy who probably coached football 20 years ago and still looked like he could tackle a linebacker. Dr. Park. Sorry to bother you so early. I wanted to talk to you about Sarah Chin. My stomach dropped. What about her? Well, she mentioned you're having her revise the digital literacy proposal. He settled into the chair across from my desk without being invited, the move of someone comfortable with authority. I wanted to put in a good word for the project. Sarah's been working on this for 8 months. It's solid. 8 months. She'd been planning this since before I'd even applied for the job here, back when it was just an abstract possibility that I might end up at Lincoln High. I appreciate your input, Tom. The timeline just seems rushed for something this comprehensive. Maybe, but here's the thing, Sarah's not just some young teacher throwing around buzzwords. She did her master's thesis on technology integration at Stanford. She knows what she's talking about. Stanford. Of course. Add that to the growing list of things that made Sarah Chin legitimately impressive rather than just mockable. The budget concerns are valid regardless of her credentials, I said. Tom leaned forward. Are they, though? Because I've seen the district approve programs with a lot less research for a lot more money. Remember the $73,000 they spent on those interactive whiteboards that half the teachers never learned to use? He had a point. That particular debacle had happened under my predecessor, but it was exactly the kind of waste I'd been hired to prevent. Look, Tom continued, I don't know what happened between you two, but Sarah seemed pretty shaken up yesterday after your meeting. She's usually the most confident person in the building. If this is about something personal. It's not, I said too quickly. Tom studied my face with the expression of someone who'd been teaching teenagers for 15 years and could spot bullshit from across a classroom. Okay. But just so you know, Sarah's got a lot of supporters here. Teachers, parents, students. If her program gets killed for reasons people can't understand, they're going to notice. After he left, I sat staring at my computer screen, trying to focus on budget reports and failing miserably. Tom's warning had been polite but clear, the faculty was watching how I handled Sarah, and my credibility as a leader could hinge on being fair to her. At 10:30 a.m., my secretary buzzed me. Dr. Park. Sarah Chin is here to see you. She says she has those revisions you requested. I glanced at the clock. I'd asked her to revise a comprehensive 5-year plan. Most people would need at least a week. She'd done it in 18 hours. Send her in. Sarah entered carrying a thick folder and what looked like a laptop bag. She traded yesterday's professional blazer for a simple gray sweater and jeans. It was her planning period, I remembered from the schedule. I know this is fast, she said, setting the folder on my desk, but I couldn't sleep last night, so I figured I might as well work. I've restructured the entire implementation timeline and identified 4 potential funding sources that could replace the state technology grants. I opened the folder to find a completely reorganized proposal. Color-coded timelines, detailed budget breakdowns, even mock-ups of how the program would look in different classrooms. The work was meticulous. You did all this since yesterday. I told you, I couldn't sleep. She pulled out her laptop. I also put together a presentation showing how the 5-year timeline actually creates opportunities for better data collection and program refinement. Would you like to see it? Sarah Chen had just done in one night what should have taken weeks. And despite myself, despite everything, I was impressed. I stared at Sarah's revised proposal, genuinely speechless. The 5-year timeline wasn't just a reluctant compromise, she turned it into an advantage. Year 1 would focus on teacher training and pilot programs. Years 2 and 3 would handle full implementation with built-in assessment periods. Years 4 and 5 included program expansion and sustainability planning that I hadn't even thought to require. The corporate partnership component is particularly interesting, I said, flipping to her funding appendix. Tech Forward Industries and Regional Bank have both committed to preliminary discussions. I called them at 6 a.m., Sarah said, and I detected the faintest hint of pride in her voice. Both companies have existing educational outreach programs, but nothing specifically focused on digital literacy. They're interested in piloting a partnership model that could expand to other schools in the district. She turned my roadblock into a potential district-wide initiative. In one sleepless night. The budget savings are significant too, she continued, clicking through her presentation. By extending the timeline, we can purchase equipment in smaller batches and take advantage of technology refresh cycles. Total cost drops from $47,000 to $31,000 over 5 years, but the program actually reaches more students. I wanted to find something wrong with it. Some oversight or flaw that would justify my initial skepticism. Instead, I found myself looking at a proposal that was better in every measurable way than the original. This is thorough work, Ms. Chen. Thank you. She hesitated, then added, Dr. Park, I know yesterday was complicated. But this program matters to me. These kids deserve better than worksheets about internet safety and typing classes. They're living in a digital world, and we're preparing them for 1995. Despite everything, the coffee shop humiliation, the casual cruelty, the fact that she called me the dumb one, I found myself nodding in agreement. I'll present the revised proposal to the Budget Committee Friday, I said. But I want Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Williams formally on board before then. Written commitment, not just preliminary conversations. Already done. Sarah pulled 2 signed documents from her folder. They both reviewed the 5-year plan last night and agreed to participate in the pilot phase. Of course they did. Sarah Chen, it seemed, was the kind of person who didn't just succeed, she over-succeeded, turning every challenge into an opportunity to excel further. One more thing, I said, surprising myself. I want you to present this yourself on Friday. The committee should hear directly from the program architect. Sarah's eyes widened. Really? Principal presentations to the budget committee are usually reserved for department heads. Exceptional programs deserve exceptional consideration. She gathered her materials, moving with the efficient grace of someone who just scored a major victory. At the door, she paused. Dr. Park. I know I don't deserve to ask this, given how I behaved yesterday, but why are you giving me this opportunity? I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. 24 hours ago, this woman had publicly humiliated me. Now she was creating programs that could transform our students' educational experience. The contradiction made my head spin. Because you're not actually the dumb one, Miss Chen. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I never said you were dumb. I said you were. I called you. She stopped, realizing there was no way to finish that sentence gracefully. Friday at 3:30 p.m., I said. Don't be late. After she left, I sat alone with the uncomfortable realization, Sarah Chen might have been cruel, but she wasn't wrong about being exceptional at her job. Which somehow made everything more complicated. The budget committee meeting on Friday was scheduled for 3:30 p.m., but by 3:15, I was already regretting my decision to let Sarah present. The committee members were filing into the conference room, Dr. Martinez, the district finance director, 3 school board members, and Mrs. Henderson, the union representative who had a reputation for asking pointed questions that made administrators sweat. Sarah arrived at exactly 3:28 p.m., looking polished and confident in a navy dress and heels. She brought a rolling cart with her laptop, presentation materials, and what looked like student work samples. As she set up her equipment, I noticed her hands were steady. Mine weren't. Before we begin, Mrs. Henderson said, consulting her tablet, I want to note that this is unusual. Dr. Park, why are we hearing from Ms. Chen directly instead of receiving your administrative summary? The question I've been dreading. The real answer, that I was either being exceptionally fair or exceptionally stupid, wasn't exactly committee appropriate. Ms. Chen has spent 8 months developing this initiative, I said. The committee deserves to hear from the subject matter expert, not a filtered version through administration. Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow but said nothing. As my former boss, she knew I typically preferred controlling the narrative in budget meetings. Very well, Henderson said. Ms. Chen, you have 20 minutes. Sarah launched into her presentation with the confidence of someone who'd spent her career commanding classroom attention. Her slides were crisp, her data compelling, her vision clear. She walked the committee through student engagement statistics, showed samples of multimedia projects her pilot students had created, and outlined implementation phases with military precision. The 5-year timeline allows for sustainable growth, she explained, clicking to a budget breakdown that color-coded expenses by year. Rather than front-loading costs and hoping for continued funding, we're building a program that becomes increasingly cost-effective over time. Board member Robert Kim leaned forward. The corporate partnerships are interesting, but what happens if Tech Forward or Regional Bank pulls out after year 2? Excellent question. Sarah's smile was genuine, not the practiced politician smile most teachers used with board members. I've structured the partnership so each year stands alone. If we lose a sponsor, we scale that year's expansion accordingly, but the core program continues. She'd anticipated the question. Of course she had. The presentation continued flawlessly until Mrs. Henderson asked the question that made my stomach drop. Ms. Chen, I'm curious about the timeline here. Dr. Park has been principal for exactly 4 days. How did you develop a 5-year plan and secure preliminary corporate partnerships so quickly? Sarah's eyes flicked to mine for just a moment. I actually had a 3-year version prepared previously. Dr. Park's feedback about timeline sustainability prompted me to expand the scope, which led to exploring alternative funding sources. Technically true, but it made me sound like a collaborative leader who'd improved her proposal through thoughtful guidance. The reality, that I'd initially rejected her timeline out of spite and she turned my obstacle into an advantage, remained diplomatically buried. Impressive turnaround time, Henderson noted, making a note on her tablet. The committee voted unanimously to approve Sarah's program with full funding, $31,000 spread over 5 years, plus approval to pursue the corporate partnerships. As members filed out, Dr. Martinez lingered. David, that was well handled. Sarah's program could be a real showcase for the district. After everyone left, Sarah was packing up her materials when I approached her cart. Congratulations, I said. That was a strong presentation. Thank you. She paused, unplugging her laptop. Dr. Park, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you tell them you'd asked me to completely restructure the timeline? You could have taken credit for the improvements. I watched her wind up her power cord with practiced efficiency. The question felt like a test, though I wasn't sure what the right answer was supposed to be. Because they weren't my improvements, I said finally. They were yours. Sarah looked up from her packing, studying my face with an expression I couldn't quite read. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something else. Instead, she just nodded. See you Monday, Dr. Park. As she wheeled her cart toward the door, I realized I had no idea what game we were playing anymore. Or who was winning. Monday morning brought the first real test of whatever fragile professional détente Sarah and I had established. I was reviewing enrollment reports when my secretary buzzed me with a tone that suggested trouble. Dr. Park. There's been an incident. Ms. Chen is requesting to see you immediately. I found Sarah in the main office, sitting across from a red-faced man in an expensive suit who was gesturing aggressively at a teenage girl beside him. The girl, I recognized her as Madison Kelly, one of Sarah's junior English students, looked like she'd been crying. What's the situation? I asked Sarah quietly. Mr. Kelly is upset about Madison's grade on her digital media project, Sarah said, her voice carefully neutral. He wants it changed. Changed from what to what? She received a C-. He believes it should be an A. I looked at Madison, who was staring at her shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. Her father, meanwhile, had noticed my arrival and turned his attention to me. You must be the new principal, he said, extending a hand. Richard Kelly. I own Kelly Construction. We did the renovation on the gymnasium 2 years ago. Ah. A donor. Someone who expected his contributions to come with perks. Nice to meet you, Mr. Kelly. I understand there's a concern about Madison's project grade. Concern. His voice rose. My daughter spent 3 weeks on that assignment. She interviewed local business owners, created a professional quality video presentation, even included statistical analysis. And this teacher gave her a C- because of some arbitrary rubric. I glanced at Sarah, who handed me a folder. Inside was Madison's project, a video about local entrepreneurship that was, admittedly, well produced. It was also clearly the work of a professional editing team, not a 16-year-old. The production quality is impressive, I said carefully. Madison has always been advanced for her age, Kelly said. She's been accepted to Northwestern's early admission program. One poor grade in English could jeopardize her scholarship eligibility. I flipped through Sarah's evaluation rubric. The girl had received full marks for content and organization, but significant deductions for authentic student work and appropriate use of technology resources. Mr. Kelly, I said, could you help me understand Madison's video editing process? She's very tech-savvy, he said quickly. Always on her computer, learning new programs. Madison. I addressed the girl directly. What software did you use for the editing? She looked up for the first time, her eyes darting between her father and me. Final Cut Pro. That's professional-grade software, I noted. Where did you learn to use it? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Madison whispered, my dad hired someone to help. Richard Kelly's face went red. She needed technical support to execute her vision. That doesn't diminish the quality of her ideas. Actually, Mr. Kelly, it does, Sarah said, speaking up for the first time since my arrival. The assignment specifically required students to work within their own technical abilities. Madison's ideas were excellent, which is why she didn't fail the project. But academic integrity requires that the work be authentically hers. Academic integrity? Kelly's voice was getting dangerous. Are you accusing my daughter of cheating? I'm explaining why her grade reflects both the strength of her concepts and the fact that the final product exceeded what she could have created independently, Sarah replied evenly. This was the moment. Sarah was right, I could see it in her carefully documented rubric, in Madison's uncomfortable body language, in the father's defensive bluster. But Richard Kelly had donated $50,000 to the school's building fund. His construction company employed the parents of at least a dozen other students. And Sarah Chen had called me the dumb one 5 days ago. Ms. Chen, I said slowly, could I see you privately for a moment? We stepped into my office, leaving the Kellys in the outer area. Sarah closed the door and turned to face me with an expression that was perfectly composed and completely unreadable. So, I said. Here we are. Here we are, she agreed. The power dynamic was crystallizing in real time. I could overrule her grade, site, administrative discretion, or community relations. Richard Kelly would be satisfied, Madison would learn that rules didn't apply to rich kids, and Sarah would learn exactly what her professional humiliation of me was worth. What do you want me to do, Ms. Chen? She met my eyes steadily. The right thing, Dr. Park. The silence between us stretched until I could hear the hall clock ticking through my office door. Sarah stood perfectly still, waiting for me to decide whether I was the kind of man who'd sacrifice a student's education for personal revenge. The right thing, I repeated. And what would that be, exactly? You know what it is. Her voice was steady, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Madison's grade stands. Mr. Kelly gets an explanation of academic integrity policies. His donation history doesn't change the fact that his daughter submitted work that wasn't authentically hers. Through the glass partition, I could see Richard Kelly pacing in the outer office, checking his Rolex with the impatience of a man who expected his problems to be solved quickly and quietly. Madison remained slumped in her chair, probably calculating how much trouble she'd be in once they got home. He'll escalate this to the school board, I said. Probably call Dr. Martinez directly. Mention his contributions to the building fund. Probably, Sarah agreed. Could make things difficult for a new principal trying to establish credibility with major donors. It could. She paused. Is that what you're worried about, Dr. Park? Your credibility? The question hit like a challenge. Sarah was betting that I wouldn't sacrifice my integrity for political convenience, or personal payback. She was betting that whatever else I might be, I wasn't corrupt. It was a hell of a gamble, considering our history. Mr. Kelly's going to demand a meeting with my supervisor, I continued. He'll argue that you're being unreasonably rigid, that Madison's work quality speaks for itself regardless of who helped with technical execution. And you'll explain that academic integrity isn't negotiable, Sarah said, though I noticed her fingers were gripping her grade book more tightly. That exceptions for wealthy families would undermine the entire educational process. Will I? For the first time since entering my office, Sarah's composure cracked slightly. Yes. I hope you will. Hope. Such a fragile word from someone who'd been so certain of my incompetence 6 days ago. I walked to my desk and pulled out the district policy manual, flipping to the section on academic integrity. The language was clear, grades should reflect authentic student achievement, with accommodations made only for documented learning differences or technical access issues. Madison Kelly had neither. You documented your grading process thoroughly, I said, reviewing her rubric again. Specific criteria, clear expectations, detailed feedback on where she lost points. I always do. Sarah's voice was gaining strength. Every assignment, every student. If you're going to fail someone or significantly impact their GPA, you'd better have ironclad documentation. Smart policy. I closed the manual and looked at her directly. Especially when dealing with parents who have lawyers on speed dial. Dr. Park. Sarah took a step closer to my desk. I know things between us are complicated. But Madison Kelly deserves the same standards as every other student. If I change her grade because her father donates money, what message does that send to the kids whose families can't afford professional video editors? She was right, and we both knew it. The question was whether I was petty enough to let personal feelings override obvious professional ethics. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. We're going back out there. You're going to explain your grading criteria to Mr. Kelly in detail. I'm going to support your assessment and outline our appeals process if he wants to pursue it further. Sarah's relief was visible, though she tried to hide it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, I said, opening my office door. He's not going to take it well. Richard Kelly's reaction to our unified position was exactly as explosive as I predicted, involving threats to contact the superintendent, references to his family's significant community investment, and a promise to review all future school funding priorities. But Madison Kelly kept her C-, and Sarah Chen learned that I wasn't entirely the dumb one after all. The Kelly incident should have been the end of it. Sarah had her vindication. I'd proven I could be fair despite our personal history, and we'd established a functional working relationship based on mutual professional respect. Instead, it opened a door I hadn't expected. 2 days after Richard Kelly stormed out of my office promising vague retribution, Sarah knocked on my door during her lunch period. She was carrying a coffee cup from Grind Coffee and wearing an expression I couldn't quite read. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. "Of course. Come in." She sat across from my desk, the same chair she'd occupied during our first official meeting, but her posture was different now. Less defensive, more uncertain. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for backing me up with the Kelly situation. I know it would have been easier to just change the grade and move on." "It was the right call," I said. "Madison's already turned in a revised version using iMovie instead of professional software. Much more authentic work. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." Sarah took a sip of her coffee, gathering her thoughts. "Authentic work. I've been thinking about our first meeting." My pulse quickened. "Oh. At the coffee shop." The things I said. She set down her cup and looked directly at me. "Dr. Park, I need you to understand something. That morning, God, this is embarrassing, I'd just gotten off the phone with my ex-boyfriend. He'd called to tell me he was engaged to his 22-year-old dental hygienist." I blinked, not sure where this was going. "Okay. Marcus and I dated for 3 years. He broke up with me in June, said he needed to focus on his career and figure out what he really wanted. Apparently what he really wanted was someone 6 years younger with perfect teeth and no student loans." Sarah laughed, but it sounded hollow. "So when you approached me at the coffee shop, asking about educational philosophy like teaching was something worth discussing intellectually. I was already feeling pretty raw about men who seemed too good to be true." The confession hit me like a physical weight. "You thought I was too good to be true. David, Dr. Park, you sent me a thoughtful message about project-based learning at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night. Who does that? Either you were genuinely interested in educational theory, which seemed impossible because guys like you usually," she stopped herself. "Sorry. That's not fair. Guys like me usually what?" Sarah's cheeks flushed. "Guys who look like you. I know that sounds terrible, but I've been teaching for 6 years, and the attractive men who show interest in my work usually have ulterior motives. They want help with their own kids' homework, or they're trying to impress some other teacher, or they think dating an educator makes them seem deep and caring." I stared at her, trying to process this revelation. Sarah Chen, confident, accomplished, beautiful Sarah Chen, had dismissed me because she thought I was too attractive to be genuinely interested in education. "So when you approached me that morning," she continued, "right after Marcus called with his engagement news, I assumed you were playing some angle. The LinkedIn message, the accidental meeting, the questions about my work. It felt calculated." "It was calculated," I admitted. "I've been trying to work up the courage to talk to you for weeks. I know that now." She picked up her coffee again, using it as a shield. "Melissa told me yesterday that you have a doctorate in educational administration from UC Berkeley. That you published research on technology integration in underserved schools. That you turned down 3 other principal positions to come here." My stomach dropped. "What else did Melissa tell you?" "That you specifically asked about Lincoln High's English department during your interview process. That you mentioned being interested in our digital literacy initiatives before you'd even seen my proposal." Sarah's eyes met mine. "David, did you take this job because of me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Through my office window, I could see students heading to 5th period, backpacks slung over shoulders, phones tucked discreetly in their palms. Normal high school life continuing while my world tilted sideways. "Partially," I said, the word feeling like a confession. "Oh God." Sarah set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. "Oh God, this is so much worse than I thought." Sarah's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, guilt, something that might have been panic. She pressed her hands against her cheeks like she was trying to hold herself together. "How partially?" she asked quietly. I leaned back in my chair, realizing I'd already said too much to stop now. "When the Lincoln High position opened up, I researched the faculty. Your digital literacy articles caught my attention first, they were genuinely innovative. Then I saw your debate team had won regionals 2 years running. Then I may have looked at your social media." "For how long?" The truth felt like stepping off a cliff. 6 months before I applied. Sarah stood up abruptly and started pacing in front of my desk. 6 months. You spent 6 months researching me, then took a job at my school, then tried to approach me at a coffee shop like it was some casual coincidence. When you put it like that, it sounds psychotic, stalkerish, completely unethical. Her voice was rising, and I glanced nervously at my office door. "David, do you understand what you've done? You're my boss. You control my performance evaluations, my tenure recommendations, my entire career trajectory. And you got this position because you were obsessed with me." "I wasn't obsessed," I protested. "I was interested. There's a difference." "Is there?" She stopped pacing and stared at me. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like an elaborate scheme to manufacture a relationship with someone who didn't know you existed." The accusation stung because it held just enough truth to be devastating. I had maneuvered myself into Sarah's professional orbit. I had used my position to force interactions she might not have chosen freely. "Sarah, I need you to understand something," I said, standing up to face her. "Yes, I was aware of you when I applied for this job. But I was qualified for this position regardless. I earned my doctorate, I had 5 years of administrative experience, I was already being recruited by 3 other districts. That doesn't make this better. And when you humiliated me at that coffee shop," I continued, my voice hardening, "I could have destroyed your digital literacy program. I could have given you the worst teaching schedule, assigned you lunch duty every day, made your life miserable in a dozen legal ways. But I didn't. Sarah's pacing slowed. You made me completely restructure my timeline. Because it needed restructuring. The 5-year plan you presented to the budget committee was objectively better than your original proposal. You said so yourself. But your initial rejection wasn't about the timeline quality, she said. It was about punishing me. Initially, yes, I admitted. For about 12 hours. Then I read your work and realized you were right about everything except thinking I was incompetent. Sarah sank back into her chair, looking exhausted. This is such a mess. It doesn't have to be. Doesn't it? She looked up at me with an expression that was equal parts frustrated and sad. David, even if I believed your intentions were purely professional from the Kelly incident forward, which I want to believe, because you did the right thing when it mattered, this situation is ethically impossible. Why? Because I'm starting to like you, she said quietly. The way you handled Richard Kelly, the questions you asked about my program, the fact that you gave me credit for improvements you could have claimed yourself. You're not the person I thought you were at that coffee shop. My heart jumped. Is that bad? It's terrible, Sarah said. Because now I'm sitting here wondering if my feelings are genuine or if they're just Stockholm Syndrome from having my career in your hands. And you're wondering if my interest is real or if I'm just trying to secure job security through personal relationships. She was right. The power imbalance made everything suspect, every interaction potentially manipulative from either direction. So what do we do? I asked. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring out my office window at the courtyard where her debate team practiced. I don't know, she said finally. But I think we're about to find out, because someone just took a photo of us through your office window. I spun around to follow Sarah's gaze and felt my blood turn to ice. Standing in the courtyard with her phone pointed directly at my office window was Jessica Martinez, the blonde friend from the coffee shop, who I now realized was also the daughter of my predecessor, Dr. Martinez. She lowered the phone when she saw us looking, but the damage was already done. Shit, I muttered, then immediately felt stupid for swearing in front of a faculty member. Sorry. But shit. Sarah had gone pale. Jessica's been gunning for me since I got the debate team position she wanted. She applied to coach it 3 times and got passed over because she's never actually taught debate, she just likes arguing. She's Dr. Martinez's daughter, I said, pieces clicking together. The former principal. And she teaches freshman PE and thinks she should have input on academic programs. Sarah stood up, moving away from the window. David, if she heard any part of our conversation. I didn't need her to finish the thought. Jessica Martinez had just photographed what could easily be interpreted as an intimate moment between a principal and teacher, Sarah leaning forward earnestly, me standing close to my desk, both of us looking intense and focused on each other. Without context, it would look exactly like what everyone would assume it was. How much could she have heard through the glass? I asked, though I already knew the answer. My office windows were old and thin, and we hadn't exactly been whispering. Enough. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went even paler. It's already starting. She turned her screen toward me. A text message from an unknown number, asterisk interesting meeting with the new boss. Hope it was about curriculum development winking face asterisk. Anonymous number, I noted. Could be anyone. Could be Jessica. Could be someone Jessica sent the photo to. Sarah's hands were shaking slightly. David, do you understand what this means? If there's even a rumor that we're involved personally, every decision you make regarding my career becomes suspect. The digital literacy program, my performance evaluations, committee assignments, all of it gets tainted. My office phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID and my stomach dropped further. It's Dr. Martinez. My supervisor. Sarah's eyes widened. Already? I picked up on the 3rd ring, trying to sound calm. Dr. Park speaking. David, it's Elena Martinez. I just got an interesting phone call from my daughter. She's concerned about some faculty interactions she observed and thought I should be aware of them. What kind of interactions? I asked, though we both knew exactly what she meant. The kind that require immediate administrative review. I'm scheduling a meeting for tomorrow at 8 a.m. in my office. I suggest you bring union representation. The line went dead. I set the phone down carefully, aware that Sarah was watching my every move. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., I said. With union representation. Sarah closed her eyes. This is exactly what I was afraid of. David, what are you going to tell her? The truth, I said. That we were discussing a student grade dispute and your professional development goals. And if she asks about the coffee shop incident, I'll tell her that too, if she asks directly. I met her eyes. Sarah, I won't lie to protect myself if it means destroying your reputation. That's very noble, she said quietly, but if you tell her everything, we're both finished. She'll recommend transferring one of us to another school, and it won't be the principal she just hired. She was right. In the span of 20 minutes, we'd gone from cautiously optimistic colleagues to potential scandal. And somewhere in the building, Jessica Martinez was probably crafting her next move. The meeting with Dr. Martinez was still 14 hours away, but by 6 p.m., the rumor mill had already ground our reputations to dust. I was packing up my office when Tom Bradley knocked on my door, his expression grim. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. Off the record. About? About the fact that 3 different parents have already called the school asking if it's true that you and Sarah Chen are having an affair. Tom settled into the chair across from my desk. About the fact that Jessica Martinez has been in the teacher's lounge for the past hour showing people a photo on her phone. About the fact that Sarah just submitted a request for emergency transfer to Washington High. My stomach plummeted. She's transferring. She's trying to. Tom leaned forward. David, I don't know what happened between you two, and frankly I don't want to know. But Sarah Chen is the best teacher this school has, and if she leaves because of some gossip campaign, we're all going to suffer for it. I stared at my computer screen, where Sarah's transfer request was probably already waiting in my email. The irony was suffocating. I'd spent 6 months maneuvering to work with her, and now my presence was driving her away. What exactly is Jessica saying? I asked. Tom pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. It was the photo Jessica had taken, but cropped and edited to look even more intimate than the original moment. In the image, Sarah appeared to be leaning across my desk toward me, her hands seemingly reaching for mine. My body language looked protective, possessive even. She's telling people Sarah was crying in your office, Tom continued, and that you were comforting her. She's suggesting that Sarah's digital literacy program got approved because of personal favoritism rather than merit. That's completely false. Maybe, but Jessica's got receipts. Tom scrolled through his phone. She's documented every interaction between you two since you started. The private meeting after your first faculty session. The budget committee presentation where you gave her special privileges. The Kelly incident where you sided with her against a major donor. Each item on Jessica's list was technically true but stripped of all context. Yes, I'd met with Sarah privately, to discuss her program. Yes, I'd let her present to the budget committee, because her work was exceptional. Yes, I'd supported her grading decision, because she was right. But strung together by someone with malicious intent, the pattern looked damning. There's more, Tom said reluctantly. Jessica claims she overheard you talking about taking the job because of her and Sarah saying she was starting to like you. That sound familiar? Fuck. This time I didn't apologize for swearing. She heard everything. So it's true. I looked at Tom's weathered face, calculating how much honesty this situation could bear. He'd been teaching for 15 years, had seen 3 different principals come and go, commanded respect from faculty and administration alike. If anyone could help me navigate this mess, it would be him. It's complicated, I said finally. I knew about Sarah before I took this job. I was impressed by her work, thought she was brilliant, maybe developed feelings I shouldn't have. But Tom, I swear to you, every professional decision I've made regarding her has been based on merit. I believe you, Tom said, surprising me. Sarah's proposal was solid regardless of your motivations. But belief isn't going to save either of your careers if Elena Martinez decides this is a liability issue. My computer chimed with a new email. Sarah's transfer request, submitted at 5:47 p.m., requesting immediate reassignment due to irreconcilable professional conflicts. She's running, I said, staring at the screen. Can you blame her? Tom stood up, straightening his jacket. David, you've got until tomorrow morning to figure this out. Either you find a way to make this right, or Lincoln High loses its best English teacher because of administrative drama. After he left, I sat alone in my office as the building emptied around me, reading Sarah's transfer request over and over. Professional and impersonal, it gave no hint of the woman who'd revolutionized digital literacy or defended academic integrity against wealthy donors. Just another casualty of my spectacularly poor judgment. At 7:30 a.m. the next morning, I stood outside Dr. Martinez's office with my union representative, watching Sarah pace the hallway with her own advocate. We hadn't spoken since yesterday's disaster, but her red-rimmed eyes told me everything I needed to know about how she'd spent the night. Dr. Park. Elena Martinez's secretary gestured us inside. She's ready for you. The meeting was as brutal as I'd expected. Jessica's photo blown up on a laptop screen, printouts of our meeting schedules, a timeline of my suspicious decisions regarding Sarah's career. Dar. Martinez was thorough, professional, and absolutely convinced that I'd compromised my position beyond repair. The optics alone are devastating, she said, sliding a resignation letter across her desk. Sexual harassment allegations, abuse of power, administrative misconduct, we're looking at potential lawsuits from every angle. There was no sexual harassment, I protested. No abuse of power. Every decision I made regarding Ms. Chen was based on professional merit. Merit? Dr. Martinez pulled out a thick folder. David, I've done some checking since yesterday. You researched Sarah Chen for months before applying here. You specifically asked about our English department during your interview. You've met with her privately 4 times in 8 days. My union rep, a sharp woman named Patricia Wells, leaned forward. Dr. Martinez, having professional interest in faculty capabilities isn't misconduct. Everything Dr. Park has documented shows appropriate administrative oversight. Appropriate? Elena laughed bitterly. Patricia, my daughter overheard him admitting he took this job because of Sarah Chen. How is that appropriate? The room fell silent. This was it, the moment where I could lie, minimize, try to save my career with creative interpretations of the truth. Or I could own what I'd done and face the consequences. You're right, I said quietly. I did take this job partially because of Sarah. But not for the reasons you think. Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow. Enlighten me. I pulled out my own folder, copies of Sarah's published articles, her debate team championship records, testimonials from students and parents. Elena, in 6 years of teaching, Sarah Chen has revolutionized student engagement, won state-level competitions, and developed programs that other districts are trying to replicate. When I saw Lincoln High had someone that exceptional on staff, yes, it influenced my decision to apply here. That's not what Jessica heard. Jessica heard part of a conversation about professional development and filled in the blanks with gossip, I interrupted. Yes, I developed personal feelings for Sarah. Yes, I handled that poorly. But look at the actual record. I spread Sarah's documentation across the table. The digital literacy program I approved. It's brilliant, and the budget committee voted unanimously to fund it. The Kelly incident where I supported her grading decision. She was protecting academic integrity against donor pressure. Every committee assignment, every professional opportunity I've given her has been based on demonstrated excellence. Patricia Wells picked up the thread. Dr. Martinez, if Dr. Park had been showing favoritism, wouldn't Ms. Chen's outcomes be disproportionately positive compared to her qualifications? Instead, what we see is appropriate recognition of exceptional work. Elena Martinez studied the papers, her expression unreadable. And what about Ms. Chen's transfer request? She's protecting both of us from exactly this kind of scrutiny, I said. She knows that any future success she has here will be questioned because of rumors about our relationship. She's sacrificing her position at a school she loves to preserve her professional reputation. Through the conference room window, I could see Sarah in the hallway, checking her phone with the nervous energy of someone whose career hung in the balance. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. I'm withdrawing my resignation. Sarah's transfer request gets denied. And if anyone, including your daughter, continues spreading unsubstantiated rumors about faculty conduct, they'll face disciplinary action for creating a hostile work environment. Dr. Martinez stared at me. You're giving me ultimatums now. I'm telling you that Lincoln High School deserves better than losing its best teacher to administrative gossip. Sarah Chen has done nothing wrong except excel at her job while working for a principal who developed inappropriate feelings. Don't punish her for my mistakes. The silence stretched for a full minute before Elena Martinez finally spoke. Your probationary period is extended to 2 years, she said. Any hint of impropriety, any suggestion of personal involvement with faculty, and you're gone immediately. Ms. Chen's transfer request will be denied, but she gets moved to department head with a $4,000 salary increase to compensate for this mess. I felt my knees go weak with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me, Elena said, standing up. Thank the fact that you're apparently too principled for your own good. Most men would have saved themselves and thrown the teacher under the bus. As we filed out of her office, Sarah looked up from her phone with cautious hope. I caught her eye and nodded once, the smallest gesture that meant everything had changed. Later that afternoon, I found her in her classroom, updating bulletin boards with student work. She looked up when I knocked, her expression carefully neutral. Department head, I said. Congratulations. Thank you. She pinned up another essay, not quite meeting my eyes. David. Dr. Park. I need you to know that I meant what I said yesterday. About starting to like you. But nothing can happen, I finished. I know. Elena was very clear about the boundaries. Sarah finally looked at me directly. Is that okay? Working together professionally without me being the dumb one who ruins your career with inappropriate feelings. I smiled, taking the sting out of the words. Yes, Sarah. It's okay. Your students need you here. The school needs you here. She was quiet for a moment, then said, for what it's worth, you're not actually the dumb one. You're just the one who fell for someone whose life you couldn't research on social media. As I left her classroom, I realized she was right. I'd spent months studying Sarah Chen's professional accomplishments, but I'd never understood the most important thing about her. She was worth more than my feelings, more than my career ambitions, more than whatever fantasy I'd built around the idea of us. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is admit you're not smart enough to deserve something. But you can still be wise enough to protect it.